Lots of people are playing pickleball and lots of people are getting injured. My name is Erin Perzewski. I am the founder of Alkalign. We focus on functional fitness and injury prevention. Today, I'm going to talk about two of the most common injuries in pickleball, Achilles tendonitis and the dreaded Achilles rupture. So we're going to do a series of checks to just see what your baseline is. I'll show you some stretching and rolling techniques, and then we'll go back and recheck. And just please, please, please notice how you feel at the beginning and then how you feel at the end, because that feedback loop is what is going to inspire you to keep doing the session over and over so you can avoid these injuries. So you're going to need a set of yoga tune-up balls. I have tried everything on the market. This is what I recommend. They come in different sizes. Today we're going to use the medium and the large, but if you only have one set, I recommend the medium set. This is more practical, in my opinion, than a foam roller, which is too big to get all the things we're going to roll today. And it's not as hard as a lacrosse ball. I often get the question, can I use a lacrosse ball or something about the hardware store for this rolling? I don't recommend it. I recommend using something that is engineered and designed for the human body. Okay, so come to a stable surface. I really want you to hold on for this so that you're not distracted by balance. And you're going to take your right foot in front of your left foot like you are on a tightrope. You want your front heel to touch your back big toe, and then bend your knees to the point where, as far as you can with that ankle mobility without lifting a heel, and just notice how that feels. Does it feel tight? Is there any tugging or pulling on the back of your heel or your Achilles, or maybe even the front calf? And just take a snapshot in time and then switch sides. So left foot in front of the right, like you're on a tightrope, one foot in front of the other, bend your knees. Notice if there's a difference, one side versus the other. That can often be indicative of imbalances in your body. And then stand up, bring your feet hip width distance apart, and you're going to go just into a simple squat. Reach your hips back, reach your arms forward as a counterbalance, and then stand up. So notice how this feels for your feet and your lower body. Notice when you squat, do your knees come forward and do your heels lift a little bit? Do you notice any tightness in your shins or your feet? And then test your balance, your ankle strength and stability, and add a heel raise. So we're going to be rolling your feet, your calves, and your shins today, all areas of the lower body. All of that impacts everything going on in your upper body as well. But this is going to be important specifically for the two injuries I mentioned. By the way, just this exercise of lifting your heels is important for ankle stability. So that's preventative for pickleball injuries. All right, last one. And then set your heels down. And if you have a block, a yoga block, this is great. Otherwise, you can come up to what I call a baseboard, or if you have a step in the room you're in, you can put the ball of your foot on something higher and your heel lower. It's a little awkward for me to do it on my baseboard and show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to use a block. Put the ball of your foot on the block, drop your heel below, and then face towards whatever surface you're using and pull yourself in. If you don't have something like I do to pull in, you can kind of just shift your weight forward. And notice how that feels in your calf muscles. You have two muscles in your calves, your gastrocnemius and your soleus muscle. We're going to stretch both. So this is getting more of the gastroc. Then take the foot that was forward and step it back into a pretty wide staggered stance, but energize your heel down. You want the back heel down. So if your back heel is lifting up, scoot your foot in a little bit. And then from here, take a little bend and stretch. Why are we doing all this calf checking? Because your calf inserts into your heel by way of a tendon called your Achilles. So it's all connected. Last one. And then switch sides. Bring your left foot forward. You're elevating the ball of your foot and then shift forward. Feel that stretch in the back of your calves. Feels a little tighter for me on this side. And then step your forward foot back, stagger your stance again. You can hold on to something. This is not a balance exercise. And then bend and stretch. Just make sure the back heel is down and you want to feel structure. This is more for the soleus muscle. So if you're in really far and you're going like this and you don't feel anything, step back. If you're back here and your heel's lifted, step forward. Just adjust as needed. Pay attention to how this feels because as I mentioned, we're going to do a series of things and then we're going to come back and recheck. And the recheck's only as valuable as the check. You have to have something to compare it to. Okay, now walk your ankles, knees, and thighs together like this. Tuck your toes under and sit back on your feet. Notice how that feels in yoga. This is called screaming toes. And you might be experiencing that sensation right now. So this is a stretch for the bottom of your feet. But if you're anything like me, you might notice a little bit of something in your Achilles, right? Things get sticky and stuck in all different places in our bodies. And usually we're moving so quickly from one thing to the next, we don't really stop to pay attention to those. But this is an opportunity to slow down, pay attention, notice where things are sticky and stuck, and address those before they escalate into something more serious. Okay. And then separate your feet in your hands, tuck your toes under, and press up into a downward dog. Pedal your feet back and forth. Look back at your feet and notice how far your heels are from the ground. So my heels are pretty close to the ground. Sometimes I see people that are really tight, their heels are lifted. If I pedal my feet and I push one at a time, I can get a little bit closer to the ground. So just notice how that feels. You might be super tight. You might not be tight at all. Even if you're not really tight, doesn't mean that this rolling isn't valuable. This is preventative as much as it is restorative. Okay, walk your hands and feet toward each other. Round up. This is where you need at least one ball. I'm going to use two together because it's just easier than taking one in and taking one out, and we're going to use them toted for the next thing as well. But if you've lost one and you only have one ball, you can use one. If you don't have a ball right now, definitely invest in them and you can come back and do this later. We're going to roll the bottoms of your feet. I think of all the rolling things that I'm going to teach you in this sequence and other sequences, this is probably my favorite. So put the ball, if you're using one ball, it's going to go in the center of your foot. If you're using two together, you're going to send your foot on the balls and roll the whole length of your foot. Notice that I'm holding on because I don't want to be too distracted by my balance. I want to be able to put a little bit more pressure into the balls if I need that and back off if it's too much. If you're a first time foot roller, this might feel really, really intense. It doesn't have to hurt to work, but sometimes it does feel uncomfortable. The more uncomfortable it feels, I would say the more your body is needing that. Our feet get really, really tight. They spend most of their lives in shoes, which are like sensory deprivation chambers. We kind of lose that ability to articulate through our feet and our toes. It'd be like the equivalent of having like really tight gloves on your hands all the time and trying to like text and type. It's hard, right? That would weaken the muscles in your hands. If that were the case, that kind of happens to your feet. So a lot of us have weak feet just because we've worn shoes since we were toddlers. Not your fault, just is the way it is. All of our Alkalign classes are taught without shoes for that reason, because this is recess for your feet. This is an opportunity to re-strengthen your feet, mobilize, stretch, and that impacts everything upstream. Okay, now take the ball of your foot to the ball, one or two, and anchor your heel down, kind of like you did when your foot was elevated on the block or the step. And then shift your weight forward so you feel a little stretch in your calf. You can step this foot forward if you like, or step it back. I kind of play around with it based on how it feels. But with your heel down, do that same bend and stretch of your knee. I'm trying to move my leg out of the way so you can see. Bend and stretch. Just notice how that feels. You already got a little pre-stretch in the check. And then last but not least, put your heel on the ball, soften this forward knee, just kind of wiggle your heel side to side. If you've ever had any sharp or uncomfortable sensations in your heels, that could be the beginning of plantar fasciitis, which is very gnarly as well. When I had it way back 20 plus years ago, I felt like I was walking on shards of glass. You can imagine how comfortable that was. Okay, and then set the balls aside and just take a few steps around the space you're in. Notice if there's a difference between the side you rolled and the side you didn't roll. Does one side feel a little fluffier than the other? Maybe you're just paying attention more to the foot you rolled because you just had the balls there and you spent all that time there. Okay, we're gonna switch sides. So same thing on the other side. Roll the length of your foot. I kind of roll, in a little bit. I roll out a little bit. That's why I like to use two balls together because I can kind of get a little bit of ankle mobility. I can get my inner arch. I can get my outer arch. Just provides a little bit more surface area underneath my foot. But, mix it up. Use what you've got. Do what works for you. There's a lot of science behind this rolling. It's called myofascial release. You have muscles in your feet. You also have fascia. And that fascia is like a little webbing and it gets sticky and stuck. Sometimes there's like a little traffic jam, a little knot or adhesion in your fascial body. And this kind of helps flush it through, like plunging a toilet or snaking a line or something, right? It helps to kind of just flush things through so your body slides and glides a little bit better. And that can really prevent aches, pains, and injuries. Ooh, I'm noticing like something really, really tight right here in my foot. Every day is different. I roll my feet several times a week because I've noticed it's the one single thing that's helped me feel better in every activity I do, from walking, standing, you name it. But I'm still tight sometimes. Okay, and then put the ball of your foot down like this. You can do whatever you want with the opposite foot. When I set my foot forward and I shift my weight forward a little bit, I feel a deeper stretch in my calves. And take a little bend and stretch. You can like kind of rock your foot back and forth across the ball of your foot. And then switch, put your heel right between the balls, or if you've got one ball right in the center of the ball. Soften your knees so you're not locking out, and just kind of wiggle side to side. So again, if you have tenderness in your heel, remember your Achilles inserts into your heel. So sometimes that can be a sign something's going on. If you're limping, that's usually a sign something's going on with either your calf or your Achilles, or maybe both. Pay attention to your body when it's whispering. That discomfort, that limping, that accommodation your body's trying to make is a signal. It's trying to talk to you and tell you something. And we'll usually start with a whisper and then it will just, increase in volume. And I think the loudest shouting is an Achilles rupture, which is terrible. And I want you to avoid. That being said, if you have been in that position and you're coming back, this is all good stuff for rehab as well. Okay, set the balls aside. Come down to the ground. Let's just, for fun, go into that little foot stretch again. The screaming toes. Are they still screaming or are they whispering? Does it feel a little bit better? That's a little interim recheck. Okay, and now we are going to roll the shins. Why are we rolling the shins? Your shins are here in the front of your leg. If we're talking about your Achilles, which is in the back of the leg, well, everything is connected. So what's happening in the front of your body impacts the back of your body. What's happening in your lower body impacts your upper body. It is all connected. So for this, again, I recommend having an elevated surface. I'm going to use a block. You can come to a chair, a low coffee table, anything you've got. You're going to set your pair of toted balls on top of the block, and then you're going to put your right shin on top of the balls. So come to this all fours position and roll the length of your shin from your knee to your ankle. That is a very long runway, so you might need to break it up in two segments. But you can, again, decide how much pressure you want on the balls. If this is not possible for you because you can't be in an all fours position, you can always do what I call the rolling pin, where you push with your hands and you roll your shins that way. You're going to roll up and down. If this bothers your shoulders for any reason, definitely check out our series, our pickleball series on shoulder and trunk, your torso health. We'll have some tricks in there for that as well. Okay, notice where it's most sticky. You can pause, you can rock a little bit side to side, getting kind of on either side of your shin bone. I'm going to move down a little bit closer to my ankle and kind of push and pull there. And the nice thing about having yourself elevated on a surface is that you can rotate your ankle without your toes touching the ground, unless you have really long toes. Maybe they're grazing the ground. In that case, you could, stack more books on top of each other, two yoga blocks, so that doesn't happen. Ooh, go the other way. Okay, and then switch sides. If you really like this and you want to continue rolling, you want a little bit more time in each of these areas, you can always pause this video, do a little bit more rolling, and then hit play when you're ready to start. I just want to keep it moving. You need a certain amount of time to make an impact. You need about at least 90 seconds in each area to really unlock that tension, to release what's going on. But you don't have to spend forever in these areas. Like, you don't need to roll your shins for 10 minutes. 2 minutes each side is great. A little bit goes a long way. So I found a sticky spot right here, kind of above my ankle. So I'm just rocking a little bit side to side, pinning the balls in one place. Again, if it's too much, you can lift up off the balls and be much more gentle. You can control the pressure. This is like a self massage. So, there's lymphatic massage, Swedish massage, deep tissue massage. There's all different kinds of massage. You're going to decide how much pressure you want. If this is too much with the medium balls, investing in a set of the bigger size balls will help too, especially for the areas of your body that are tight. Okay, go back and forth a few more times. We're going to move on to our calves. Ooh, oh, feel a little sticky there. Okay, again, I recommend a block for this or set of books, something to elevate your calves, but it is optional. This one you can do on the floor. Okay, you're going to use either a set of toted balls, or I'm also going to show you what this looks like with one of the larger balls. Put the balls, again, either on the ground or up on the block. I kind of like elevating here. Put your calves put the ball right in the center of your calf muscle. Take your opposite leg, cross it over. And I like to hang out here like, I don't know, I'm looking out at the ocean. And just start by what we call sustained compression, and then add mobility in your ankle. You're going to rotate your ankle in one direction, rotate it in the other direction. You notice when you start moving the ankle joint, your calves are going to give you feedback as to what is happening there. So because the two balls are together, it's covering a wide base of surface area in my calves. And then you're going to roll up and down this way. I am going to show you something I like to do with one ball. One blue ball is a little bit too intense for me. It's sort of like having a thumb in my calf. So I'm going to use one of these bigger balls. Put the ball right in the middle of your calf, cross your leg. And then when you have one, it's a circle, right? It can go around like a wheel. So I'm going to draw a little circle with my leg in one direction. And that just kind of gets into the calf muscles a little bit more. You can circle the other way. Sometimes I get fancy. I make a figure eight. And you can play around with where you feel this the most. I am feeling a little bit lower in my calf, so I'm going to move the balls there. If you're feeling nothing, if you're up too high, move the ball down. If it's too intense, move it around. Just kind of notice what's creeping up in your body. It may be different side to side. Now I'm moving the ball down even lower. And sometimes I don't move the ball itself. I just move the joint. This is a great thing you can do while you're watching TV. Just come off the couch, come down to the floor. You can do all this stuff while you're doing something else. Okay. Last but not least, for this side, you're going to take that ball right to your Achilles, right here above your heel, and you're going to dock the ball. You can use one. This is where I like to go back to two, just because it's a little bit more stable. The ball isn't rocking back and forth. So I put the center of the balls right here. And again, just notice side to side, flex and point your feet. Think about when we were doing those heel raises before. This is basically a heel raise, but you're not lifting away from gravity, but the same movement, the same dorsiflexion, the same activation of your calves as you shorten the calves, as you flex, elongate. Notice how your calves impact your Achilles and vice versa. If this is really tender and sensitive, that is definitely a sign that you want to be doing this more often. Okay, let's switch sides. I'm going to start just for a second with the two balls. So again, I can show you. Come down. You can lie all the way down if that works better for you. You can put your head on a pillow, whatever works. So I'm going to start with just kind of like side to side, letting the balls settle into my calf, and then rotate one direction, the other direction. You can roll up and down. The one thing I'll say about rolling, it doesn't take a lot of time, but you can't do it really fast. You can do it in a short amount of time, but you don't want to roll like super fast. I see people roll their feet really fast. I think we're just wired to move quickly and we think, oh, I'm going to get this done and check it off the list of things to do. But it kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, you don't really see speed massages on the spa menu. You might see a 30-minute massage, but it's not like, oh, let me do everything and, just a shorter massage. It's not a fast massage. This is not about moving fast. In fact, in order for this work to be effective, you need to down regulate and shift from your fight or flight and switch balls to your rest and restore. That's what allows this work to be effective because draw those circles. That feels good for you. It takes your brain a little while to adjust to the balls being in certain places, especially the really sticky places. Initially, your brain thinks that the ball is like a foreign invader, and sometimes it will, seize up to resist that. So remember to breathe, remember to move slowly, remember to tell your brain this ball is here to help you. It is not here to cause you pain. If you get in too deep and you can't take a deep breath, you got to back off. Take a break, grab a different tool, bigger set of balls, change your position. Okay, I'm going to go back to the toted ball so I can get into the Achilles. So you're going to dock the balls right above your heel. Again, I'm putting the opposite leg on top for a little stability and a little extra pressure. Roll your ankle one direction, roll the other direction. You can move the balls up or down. You're not going to know where you need those balls to be unless you play around with it a little bit. There's a lot of science behind why we roll, but the actual practice is more like an art. Little this, little that. All right, set the balls to the side, and then we are going to come back to the screaming toes. So tuck your toes under, sit back on your feet. This is now the third time you've done this. Notice if it feels any better, hopefully. Okay, and separate your feet. Go back to the downward dog. Remember we did this before. Look back at your feet. Notice your relationship between your heels and the floor. Notice where you feel this. So before I was kind of feeling this in my calves as I was going back and forth. Now my feet, my calves feel great, right? We just rolled both of those, but now I'm feeling a little tighter in my hamstrings. So it's a game of whack-a-mole, right? You release tension somewhere and then it sort of, you'll notice something that you weren't noticing before. Walk your hands towards your feet. Bend your knees. We're going to come back to your squat. So reach your feet back. Go ahead and stand up. Notice where your knees are in relationship to your ankles. Are your knees really far forward? Your feet are tight, shins are tight. That will happen. You actually want your hips back in a squat. It's easier on your knee joints. A little more load for your quads and your glutes, which is what you're trying to work. Notice if your heels, if they were lifting before, now you can anchor your heels down to the ground. Add the heel raise. Rolling your feet is also going to improve your balance, which you need good balance for pickleball because you're doing all sorts of funky things to get the shot, right? And so you're constantly trying to stabilize. And the thing with pickleball, I think why it's so dangerous is because it's a very fast sport and it infuses that competitive nature, right? So we're moving quickly. We're just going for the win. We're going for the shot. We're not thinking about all these things I'm talking about now. You're not thinking about where your foot is landing exactly in the court. You're just trying to hit the ball, right? So you have to train for all that outside of your pickleball sessions so that when you get into them, that muscle memory clicks in. Now take the ball of your foot to the block, the wall, whatever you've got. Do the same thing you did before. Pull yourself in. Notice how it feels for your Achilles, calves, feet. Maybe the sensation has changed. Now you roll those things. Switch sides. And then Um, bring your feet into that staggered stance. Bend and stretch. Doesn't matter which foot is forward because we're going to do both sides. We'll bend and stretch. Maybe your staggered stance is a little bit wider. Switch sides, bend and stretch. And then before we go into our very last check, I just want to show you one more exercise that will come in handy. This is one that you can do before you play, like when you're on the, sidelines of the court. I don't think you're going to get down and roll your calves on the side of the court. That's stuff you need to do at home before you play. But one thing you can do we did the squat to the heel raise. This is a great option. You can squat and raise your heels anywhere. But another great option would be to hold on, to the fence or your pickle partner and do some single-sided calf raises. Again, this is good for strengthening. We've done a lot of stretching of your calves and your feet, but you also need the strength. There's a balance of strength. We do a lot of strengthening work in our align and build classes. Switch sides. You'll notice just after a few, you start feeling it in your calves. Again, if anything feels sticky, stuck, tight, or you're just not able to do this because something's going on in your body, that is a sign you need to pay a little more attention, maybe do this session more often. Okay, back to your tightrope. Right foot forward, left foot back. Bend your knees. And again, notice the mobility in your ankles. You want to stop at a point where a heel wants to lift. I notice I can bend my knees a lot deeper here. When your knee can come forward like that, that's a sign that you've got more length back here in your Achilles. If some people are like super locked up because everything is so tight, they can't bring their knee forward. So again, this is an assessment for what your risk is for an Achilles injury. Bend your knees again, tightrope, left foot in front of the right, bend your knees. Does anything feel tight? Is anything lifting? Notice what you notice. And again, you can come back. This is meant to be something that you can repeat over time. Stretching and rolling is not a one and done. Unfortunately, you can't just roll once and expect your Achilles to be happy forever. This is something that becomes a practice, something that you incorporate into your life. And when you make this smaller investment in the stretching and rolling, it will help you avoid the injury, which is important. But more importantly, it's going to allow you to continue to do the activities that you love.